Could The Rock actually become the next US president? Well, that's exactly what a lot of people are talking about today, because recently his odds of becoming the Democrats' next presidential nominee have surged on Polymarket above even Michelle Obama and Tim Walz.
Today, we're looking at some unexplained videos that haunt my waking thoughts. Welcome back, family. Thank you to all the channel members for support. As y'all know, if you're seeing this, remember to like it, hype it up so it gets pushed to more people and get caught in the algorithm. If you haven't subscribed already, remember to smash that subscribe button. Man. We're on our road to 100K. We're pretty much 25K subs off. We're getting there, man. We're getting there. Let's go. Dude, luckily it didn't blow up, but I know those people are at least injured.
Holy! This is one of the most insane things I have ever read. Scientists are now growing mini human brains to power computers. And this whole thing is creepy as hell. Now, for starters, you know in regular computers we call it hardware. Well, the scientists in Switzerland that are currently carrying this out, they're calling theirs wetware. Bro, what? Oh, and it gets even creepier because these labs buy human skin cells from anonymous donors in Japan, and then through a series of highly complex processes and several months of growing, they turn those human skin cells into clusters of neurons they are calling organoids. Bro, I'm sorry, the naming is wild. Now, the organoids are these little white orbs that are essentially lab-grown mini human brains. Now, they're much less complex than the ones in our heads, but they have the exact same building blocks. Now, these scientists then attach these electrodes to these mini brains, and they can send and receive signals from them, which they read on a regular computer screen. Now, currently, they're very simple. It's just little signals here and there, but they want to get these mini brains to the point where they are essentially biocomputers, and they can learn, adapt, get smarter, perform tasks, kind of like AI, but the AI doesn't mimic our brains, it's our brains. And because of that, these little mini brains are unpredictable, and the scientists themselves have admitted that they still don't understand what the organoids do and why. Now, here is the eeriest part, because regular computers, they stop working, don't they? But biocomputers, they literally die. So the scientists say they can survive for up to 4 months, but before they die, they observe a flurry of activity from the organoids, which is very similar to the increased heart rate and brain activity which is seen in some humans at the end of life. Ain't no way!
The Vikings were a lot more horrifying than you thought, and way more brutal than what you learned. But why? First off, their long ships were silent killers, meaning you wouldn't even know they were coming until you heard the clash of steel and screams from hundreds of miles inland. But it gets more terrifying. On the battlefield, they unleashed berserkers, warriors who entered a trance-like rage, howling like wolves and biting their shields, fighting with such insane fury they seemed to feel no pain. And if you ever escaped, you could never truly run. Viking raids struck so deep and so fast that the enemies couldn't even catch them. They would always be gone before the help arrived, leaving nothing but fire and death behind. But worst of all was what they did to their most hated enemies. A ritual known as the blood eagle, where they carved open a victim's back, broke their legs, and pulled out their lungs to form a pair of bloody wings.
Yo, that is evil. I feel like the berserker Vikings were low-key just on drugs. They just fuel them with a bunch of amphetamines and they just told them to just go.
Top 5 animals that are smarter than humans, apparently. Number 5 are elephants. Now, maybe we shouldn't have called that movie Dumbo. Maybe we should have called it Little Smart. They say elephants never forget, and there's an infamous story of an elephant that stomped a poacher to death who killed its baby, and then a week later at the poacher's funeral, the same elephant returned and stomped the body to a pulp. Okay, this is a true story, and it wasn't written by Quentin Tarantino, by the way. I know it sounds like something out of Kill Bill. Number 4 are dolphins. Now, they say dolphins are brilliant, but also kind of mean to each other. They like gang grape each other down there under the sea, like it's some damn Diddy party. I don't know what that says about intelligence and evil going hand in hand, or fin and fin, I should say. Number 3, bonobos. Apparently they're real good at using tools. Number 2, orangutans. And I've seen some of these throwing shit around at the zoo and never thought, wow, that thing might be smarter than me. If you like this list and want more about other nonsense, follow me. Leave me a comment if you think these animals are actually smarter than humans. I think until an animal produces, a play on par with Shakespeare or a theory that's relevant to quantum physics, I'm going to say they're probably not smarter than we are, but good try. Also follow my wife Samantha, who I've tagged, to check out our podcast, Brutally Honest with Sam and Jacob. Also book me on Cameo if you want a personal message, and don't piss off an elephant. Number 1 are chimpanzees.
There is only one thing the internet cares about right now. Did the frog survive? Now, what you were seeing is a protest outside the front of the ICE headquarters in Portland, Oregon on Friday. And one individual that turned up is the anti-fascist frog, as they're known on TikTok. But when things start getting a little rowdy and people are getting arrested, the frog tries to help one of them up. As he does this, one of the ICE agents has the bright idea to try and pepper spray inside the breathing valve of the suit. Now, unfortunately, the video ends before we know what happened next. But people in the comments were furious, saying things like, that's not even funny, he could have suffocated, and that it was even attempted murder caught on video. Now, I have reached out to the frog to see what happened to them after this clip, but there are currently 2 more protesters that are currently seeking legal advice about being pepper sprayed that night as well. But what do you guys think? Was this too far or not?
Dude, I kind of agree. Like, I feel like he low-key could have suffocated. Like, I don't think, if you guys have ever been pepper sprayed, I mean, I've never been pepper sprayed, but if you ever been pepper sprayed or even been around it, that scent is just strong. Like, everything about that is strong. And he put like a ton of pepper spray in that. That was kind of evil in my opinion by the cop, but he survived.
The Titanic was a lot more horrifying than you thought, and was far worse than what you learned. But why? First off, you would be sleeping when it hit the iceberg, waking up to a loud bang and shake in the middle of the night, and at first you wouldn't even realize what happened, most people going back to sleep thinking nothing of it. When only 20 minutes later, you would start to hear commotion in the halls, being told to go to the top deck immediately, still in your night clothes, thinking it was some kind of drill. At this point, the crew already knew the ship was going down, but you wouldn't even know it yet, only feeling a very slight tilt in the ship. On the top deck, they would try to keep you distracted by playing music while slowly releasing safety boats to prevent panic, where only women and children could escape first. But as time moved on, the tilting grew much worse, where people on the bottom deck would start to see water flowing through the halls and rooms, standing in a large crowd for over an hour waiting to hopefully get a lifeboat. But as the clock neared around 2 a.m., a slow realization would take place that there's not enough safety boats for everyone. At this point, the entire ship would go into a full panic, needing to fight against the crowd to try to get onto the last few boats. Within the panic, the ship would tilt even more, causing the power to go out, which would be pitch black since there was no moonlight on that day. At around 2:18, the tilt would become so extreme it would eventually cause the ship to snap in half, many people flying off or being hit by debris. And if you somehow stayed on the ship, it was now rapidly sinking, where your only choice was to either dive into the pitch black 28 degrees water trying to find a lifeboat, or stay on the ship slowly being lowered into the water, freezing to death.
Many people wondering why David hasn't been arrested. Well, there are 2 main reasons. But first things first, for those of you that don't know, David has a problem. The body of Celeste Rivas Hernandez, remember her full name, that's important, was found in the trunk of his car. Now, in cases like this, people want answers, which is where the police have a problem as well. They can't mess this one up. Which brings us to the first reason David hasn't been arrested. The police need to do an absolutely thorough investigation. They need to know everything. Now, I understand that a lot of evidence has been found connecting David to Celeste Rivas Hernandez. But the thing is, it's not about how much evidence you have. It's about whether you can prove it to a jury. Now, if this goes to trial, with the lawyer that David's probably going to get, if police walk in and say, yo, we found this Discord chat with David, and a lawyer's just going to be like, prove it. Police would be like, David's lawyer would be like, exit? Is that what you're trying to say? Exit? Because we leaving. So again, reason number one, David hasn't been arrested. Police need proof to see to what degree did David commit this crime. It could be zero, he could have not committed it. It could be he had a part of it. It could be he did the whole thing. Now, reason number two kind of ties into reason number one. If you arrest somebody, they have the right to a speedy trial, meaning you put a time limit on yourself once you arrest someone. You better gather up all your evidence because someone's innocent until proven guilty. And you don't want a technically innocent human being sitting in a prison cell while police figure it out. Basically, arresting someone is like saying to your teacher, my project is ready. Your teacher's gonna look at you and say, all right, well, you better present it pretty soon. So police seemingly want to take their time researching all of the information so they have all of their ducks in a row. That's a good phrase. We need to use it more before an arrest is made because things can get wicked. For example, why I kept telling you to remember Celeste Rivas Hernandez's full name is because there's another Celeste, both seemingly associated with David. There's Rivas Hernandez, the one that was tragically, and then there's Herrera. She popped up in many live streams with David. People speculated they had a relationship. Now, why I bring this up is because people believe that David's relationship with Herrera was to cover up the fact that he was dating Rivas, whose age is that. So now the court game takes another step because if police believe that David did it, they need to make sure that this new Celeste is a non-factor in the court of law. If David's lawyers say, no, this is the Celeste that David was in a relationship with, police need to make sure they're on top of that. Maybe going to this Celeste and saying, hey, was your relationship with David real? Was it fake? If she says fake to cover up his relationship with Rivas Hernandez, boom, they got you. You know what I'm saying? Now, side note, some people believe because this new Celeste has appeared, David is completely innocent, to which I say, David could know one Celeste, two Celeste, four Celeste. Celeste Rivas Hernandez was found in his trunk. Keep your eye on the ball. Ain't nobody innocent until you get the evidence. Lock in. But again, all this to say this is a high profile case and it seems that police are trying to take their time to be as thorough as possible.
This is the heartbreaking moment a kangaroo was seen desperately trying to wake up his mate after she was struck by a car. The scene was so harrowing that wildlife rescuer Christian McDonald could do nothing more than shed a tear and watch on, knowing the animal's injuries were too severe to save her. The kangaroo was carrying a joey in her pouch, which Christian was able to rescue before he humanely euthanized her mum.
I guess that kind of proves that humans aren't the only species on the planet with empathy.
Nightmarish facts about your body that you probably shouldn't think about. The water you drink has probably been inside of someone or something else. Constipation can make you vomit poop. A teratoma is a rare type of tumor that can grow hair, teeth, bones, intestines, and more. There is a bloody skeleton living inside of you. Bone dust smells like Cool Ranch Doritos. This is what the MRI of a baby looks like. Holy shit. There's a condition known as fatal insomnia where one day you can't go to sleep and eventually you die because of this lack of sleep. You know that moment when you're about to fall asleep and suddenly you flinch because you feel like you're falling? This is actually known as a hypnic jerk and it alerts your body that you're dying or at least thinks that you're dying. If you decapitate someone, their head will remain conscious for 15 to 20 seconds, which is long enough for them to realize what you did to them. Humans are bioluminescent, meaning that we glow in the dark, but our eyes are just too weak to see it.
Did you know that there is a woman on the internet that cleans graves in a cemetery? She records everything and posts it on her account, and what she just did made everybody more madder than I could have ever expected. So not only does she clean graves to literal perfection, but she does things that literally nobody understands. It was already strange that she was spending so much time in a cemetery, but this is where it gets so much more worser. As one cemetery that she went to is known for having very high energy, it began to affect her negatively, because at first she was just reading the names and telling the story of the people that she found. Then she started bringing flowers to the grave, but this is where it gets even more insaner. She started finding dolls and stuffed animals, where she would take these stuffed animals and dolls home, and she washed them until they looked so much more cleaner than they did before, and people were getting even more madder at her because she was taking things out of the cemetery that aren't hers. And this is where it gets even more scarier, because people started to notice things happening in her videos. People noticed that statues were moving, her dog would start barking for no reason. Just search for grave cleaning girl, and definitely don't look up the clean girl accident. And although there's been been reports of her missing. She just posted an update and something seems off.
I'm not gonna lie, I completely hate this dude's grammar.
Grab your friends, grab a date, grab your tinfoil hats, cause an alien spaceship is gonna be in our skies come end of November, beginning December. Yes, it's the infamous 3i Atlas, and it just seems like the closer it gets, the more unexplainable it becomes. You know, the interstellar object making its way towards us that professors and media outlets are all insisting might be alien technology? Well, a literal YouTuber has taken probably the clearest photo of the object yet, somehow better than anything NASA has shown us so far. And let me tell you, this thing does not look like a comet. So sometime in the beginning of October, 3i Atlas has officially been hidden from view for us here on Earth as it passes behind the sun, only to emerge around the end of November, and be at its most visible point from Earth mid-December at its closest approach to our planet. But right before it went behind the sun, it passed by Mars, which NASA has an active satellite orbiting, the Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter, MRO. And NASA previously mentioned it's reallocating a bunch of its space telescopes and satellites to observe 3i Atlas as it passes by, of which included MRO. But just recently, they put up a notice on their site saying, due to the lapse in federal government funding, NASA is not updating this website. Conveniently, just right before the expected Mars flyby of 3i Atlas. Does this mean they're not going to be taking a photo of it anymore? Whatever this means, it's just incredibly questionable timing. And every photo NASA has released of it so far has just been a blurry, pixelated blob that anyone can dismiss as just a comet, which it might be. But somehow, amateur astronomers are taking better pics of it from here on Earth than the biggest space agency in the world. YouTuber Dobsonian Power used his backyard telescope to take this photo of 3i Atlas, which is honestly pretty wild if you ask me. I mean, the shot is fairly blurry too, but we can clearly make out a shape that is quite angular, maybe even somewhat, I don't know, triangle shaped. And digitally enhanced, this sure doesn't look like no comet to me. Comets are supposed to be fairly round and maybe lumpy, but this has like, I don't know, sharp edges and long protrusions coming out of it. Here it is, reconstructed with AI. And I know this is AI, it's far from accurate, but damn. And why is this still more clear than anything NASA has given us with their billion-dollar telescopes so far? Because the news coming out about this comet is just non-stop. Like, there's a new update every single day, with alleged leaks from European astronomers showing internal data that is not congruent with that of a comet, who also admitted the government is intentionally covering up the truth of 3i Atlas, albeit this was an anonymous post on a certain website that shall not be named. Another leaked NASA memo allegedly claims its acceleration is not consistent with Newtonian predictions, meaning it's speeding up and slowing down on its own, and that its surface appears to be made of a highly reflective composite material. Professor Avi Loeb also revealed the object is glowing from the front rather than from behind, as is expected from a comet, and also seems that it might be emanating its own light, which led some, including him, to suggest that it may be a nuclear-powered craft. Now, more recent news came out that 3i Atlas is massive, at least 33 billion tons, which is much bigger than we previously thought. And according to scientists, naturally occurring objects in interstellar space are just not supposed to be this big. Mass spectroscopy analysis reveal it's also rich in nickel and poor in iron, which is more like a manufactured alloy than it is a natural rock. Its trajectory is almost impossible to have occurred naturally, within 5 degrees of our solar system's orbital plane and passing by Mars, Venus, and Jupiter along its path, going directly behind the sun from Earth at its closest approach to the sun, which Professor Loeb stated the odds of this trajectory happening at random are like 1 in 20,000. 3i Atlas will emerge back into view for us on Earth sometime mid to end November, and then be at its most visible by Earth-based telescopes during its closest approach to us here on Earth in the beginning to mid-December. You are not going to be able to see it with the naked eye, and honestly, you're probably going to need a high-powered professional telescope to look at it yourself. But hey, if it does turn out to be artificial, it'll be pretty wild knowing an alien craft is drifting right above our heads at the end of this year. That is, if it doesn't reroute its path towards Earth when it's hidden behind the sun to invade our planet. Yeah, let's hope not.
Could The Rock actually become the next US president? Well, that's exactly what a lot of people are talking about today, because recently his odds of becoming the Democrats' next presidential nominee have surged on Polymarket above even Michelle Obama and Tim Walz. Now, realistically, his odds are still only sitting at about 2 to 3%, with Gavin Newsom and AOC being by far the top 2 contenders. But the crazy part is that he's up there without even saying that he's running. He has, although, dropped sneaky little hints. For example, in 2022, a poll came out that 46% 6% of Americans would support his presidential run, and then he revealed that after that poll came out, multiple political parties approached him to see if he would run for US president in 2024. In 2016, he told GQ, "I can't deny the thought of being a governor or president is alluring." And then just a year later, he told Variety that the 2024 presidential campaign was a realistic consideration. Now, he mentioned what stopped him was his kids. He doesn't want them to be dragged into politics. But he still left the door slightly open because he told Trevor Noah in a podcast if that's
ultimately what the people would want, then of course I would consider it.
And hypothetically, if he did run in 2028, the current odds say that he'd be up against JD Vance. So the question is Dwayne Johnson exactly what the Democrats need right now? Or would AOC and Gavin Newsom be a better option?
I feel like America has this trend where they let a lot of celebrities now become president. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's kind of like this weird new trend, like Donald Trump, now maybe even The Rock. This man was a WWE wrestler. Let me know if you guys would like The Rock as president.
The most dangerous thing for your heart is not bacon, it's not butter, and it's definitely not red meat. The most dangerous thing for your heart is anything related to decreasing nitric oxide. Low levels will increase your risk for a heart attack. Number one are foods that increase insulin resistance. That's refined sugars, refined starches, and seed oils. Number two is smoking. Number three, which might be surprising, is mouthwash. Mouthwash kills the bacteria in your mouth that helps you make nitric oxide. Consume these foods to increase your nitric oxide. Arugula, beets, dark chocolate, citrus fruits, garlic, pomegranate seeds, and fermented foods like kimchi and sauerkraut.
You're brushing teeth with a river. It's clean. Yeah. Clean enough for toothbrush. What are you using in your hand? What's that?
Toothpaste.
That's toothpaste?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Indian toothpaste.
Okay. And you no problem with stomach from this?
No problem.
No problem, yeah? You see this guy's brushing his teeth in here. Everything. Meaning it can't possibly be that bad even with your, It's easy for me to get ear infections. So I'm gonna keep my ear, I get infection easy. So I'm gonna,
Look here. It's clean.
like this, yeah?
Yes. Two hand take, I can take up.
Okay.
Yes. Clean.
Okay.
Again.
Again, huh? Still?
Yes. They're red color.
It's okay.
Look. Nosy. Yes. More water.
It's okay, I'll use soap at home. Yeah. Thank you.
I'm not gonna lie, I don't really think that water was clean.
A group of researchers say they have very strong evidence that they know where Amelia Earhart's lost plane is. Earhart has been missing since 1937, when she attempted to become the first woman to fly around the world. But 19 hours into her journey, Earhart reported to the U.S. Coast Guard that she was losing fuel. And shortly after, Earhart, her navigator Fred Noonan, and her plane mysteriously vanished above the Pacific Ocean, never to be seen again. Now, there have been countless conspiracy theories, purported sightings, and many attempts to prove what happened. But researchers from Purdue now say that they are close to solving the mystery. Back in 2020, they were looking at satellite images and spotted a visual anomaly known as the Taraya object in a lagoon on Nikamaroro. Nikamaroro is a small island in Kiribati, about halfway between Australia and Hawaii, and it just happens to be 400 miles southeast of Howland Island, which was Earhart and Noonan's planned destination. The research team is going to travel to the island. They're going to take pictures and videos of the site and use sonar to scan the area. Then they hope to drag the object out of the water in an attempt to identify it. Now, it has long been a theory that Amelia Earhart was marooned on Nikamaroro, and this could be the smoking gun to prove that theory correct. But while some historians believe this could be a breakthrough, others are a little bit more skeptical. There have been some disappointing attempts to find the plane before. Last year, an expedition team thought they found an object in the Pacific Ocean that resembled Earhart's plane, but it turned out to be a rock formation. When I was a kid, I was fascinated by Amelia Earhart. I was given this Dell Yearling biography of her, and her dreams, her ambitions, her courage were incredibly inspiring to me, and I've been fascinated by her life and her disappearance ever since. We'll have to wait and see what those researchers drag out of the ocean. I'm an optimistic person by nature. I really hope they solve the mystery of what happened to the legendary Amelia Earhart. But you let me know what you think and how you're feeling in the comments below.
If you ever want to sleep again, you'll scroll away right now, because this is the story of a man even more terrifying than the horror movie icons he inspired, like Buffalo Bill, Leatherface, and Norman Bates. This is the nightmarish true story of Ed Gein. I'm Mel Z. I talk about death, true crime, and weird pop culture stuff, so if you're a weirdo too, follow me. Ed Gein was born in La Crosse, Wisconsin in 1906 and was raised in rural isolation. His household was dominated by his fervently religious mother, Augusta, who was controlling and abusive and instilled a crippling shame and fear of sex and women in her two sons. Augusta preached that women were inherently evil, and Ed internalized his devotion and fear and believed that his mother was his only moral anchor. Ed's father, George Gein, died in 1940 from heart failure related to chronic alcoholism. Ed's older brother Henry was disturbed by Ed's obsession with their mother and would often speak poorly of her. In 1944, when he was found dead on the family property after a fire, his death was officially ruled accidental, but later accounts found bruising on his head, and suspicions persist that Ed was likely responsible for his death. After Henry's death, Ed and his mother were now alone on the farm. Just a year later, though, Augusta suffered another stroke and died, leaving Ed alone and obsessed with her memory. Ed became obsessed with the idea of bringing his mother back from the dead, and starting in the 1950s, he began exhuming bodies from the local cemetery of middle-aged women who he thought resembled his mother. The family farm became a house of horrors. He had made lampshades from human skin, bowls out of skulls, masks out of human faces, and he'd begun work on what he called a woman suit, which would allow him to become his mother and actually crawl into her skin. The house was the stuff of nightmares, and a neighbor boy actually told police at one point that he had seen shrunken heads in Ed Gein's house, but nobody seemed to believe him. The house was filled with his findings in the local graves, and in 1954 his behavior intensified when he actually murdered a woman, Mary Hogan. In 1957, he murdered a shop owner, Bernice Warden, who police later found in a horrendous state in his barn. Police began investigating and discovering all of his macabre collection. A sheriff who was on scene was reportedly so traumatized by what he saw that his health deteriorated and he died shortly after. His family believes that it was because of his experience with Ed Gein. Gein was arrested and questioned and admitted to everything and recounted the murders as well as the grave robberies and what he'd been doing in his house. In court, he was initially found mentally incompetent and was institutionalized, but later, in 1968, he was found competent to stand trial and was found guilty of murder, but legally insane, so confined to a mental health facility. While he was in prison, his house burned down. It was likely an act of arson, and shortly after, what was left of the property and the belongings on site were put up for auction. Hundreds of people showed up to buy souvenirs from this horror house. His car that he reportedly transported bodies in was sold at auction and turned into a carnival exhibit where the operator would charge 25 cents for people to look inside Ed Gein's ghoul car. Over time, the community protested the morbid spectacle, and the car was eventually put out of commission, and now nobody really knows where it is. It's supposedly just lost to time. In 1984, Ed Gein died from respiratory failure from lung cancer. He was buried in the family plot in Plainsfield, Wisconsin. His grave became a dark tourist attraction and initially looked like this when he was buried. But slowly, as visitors began chipping away at his grave, it started to really deteriorate until eventually it was stolen in the year 2000. And now it looks like this. Basically just a patch of grass with an unmarked grave. The Gein property is now just an empty lot. This is what it looked like at the time of his arrest, and this is what it looks like now. In the end, Ed Gein was laid to rest in the very cemetery that he had unearthed so many others, among the graves of women whose bodies he desecrated in the town he terrorized. His plot sits between his mother Augusta, the woman he worshipped and couldn't let go of, and his brother Henry, who many believe he murdered. The irony is chilling. Even in death, Ed Gein remains tethered to the woman he couldn't live without, and surrounded by the dead he once used to try to bring her back. How much worse is the real man compared to the horror movie icons he was based off?
Some neuroscientists believe that they now know where consciousness lives in the brain. We may actually be able to finally tell which animals are conscious or not. We'll talk about it. Consciousness is a long debated topic. It is the perception of self, and it's very hard to pin down exactly what it is. You know, at least I hope you know, that you're in your head observing things, but you got a whole brain that does different stuff. Where is consciousness coming from? Until recently, researchers have believed that it is the white matter in the brain. Until recently, researchers have believed that it was the newly evolved portions of the brain, the cortex, the stuff on the outside. Think white matter. After all, the inner part of the brain, that's more primitive, and it takes care of your body, it keeps your heart beating. It makes you afraid of things, in amygdala. However, studies of people that had large portions of their brains missing were still experiencing something akin to consciousness. In situations where the cortex was wholly missing, yes, somebody would be in a vegetative state, although if there is even the smallest bit left, caregivers would describe there being play behaviors. If the entire cortex was missing, yes, somebody would be in a fully vegetative state, but as long as there was some little piece of it left, yes, people would display behaviors that would suggest being conscious. This was suspected because caregivers would be able to describe when a child was having an absent seizure, for example. So they are at a lowered state of consciousness. And similar studies were found in animals that are not all that ethical. So one new hypothesis is that it is the inner parts of the brain. So the subcortex. The core part of your brain, that's the one that is the most ancient, but then it is refined by the cortex. So rather than it being one or the other or one single spot, it is a combination of the two. And that does make logical sense. You would need to have the basal layers of your brain in order to function, sure, and then we would probably see higher levels of function in animals that have the more developed cortex. This would also tell us that all animals are conscious to some degree. They got a brain, they are at least somewhat conscious. Not all animals have a brain. This does have some pretty interesting consequences for consciousness, but I ran out of time, so I'll talk about it next time.
My least favorite things about space. Part 22. I'm gonna hold your hand when I say this. Up and down doesn't exist. It's not real. Your notion of up and down is entirely relative to you. There are people on the other side of this floating rock that we all call home, directly below you, that have the exact opposite notion of what is up and down compared to you. Because of this, if you live in the northern hemisphere, you have seen the moon like this your entire life. If you live in the southern hemisphere, you've seen the moon like this your entire life. Neither one is wrong. There is no correct way to look at the moon, because the moon does not have an up or a down. And the entire floating rock that we live on is the same way. It has a tilt. The Earth is tilted 23.5 degrees compared to the plane of the solar system. But you can't even say that the plane of the solar system is up or down because it's tilted at a 60-degree angle compared to the plane of the galaxy. But then if you zoom out and you look at our closest galactic neighbor, you see that we're almost at a 90-degree angle compared to each other. So where's the real up and down? Because if you zoom out past that, the universe essentially becomes a 4D spider web. And good luck finding up and down there.
That actually is super crazy to think there's people under me. Like, if you go straight down, that's another side where people are seeing up just like me. It's crazy. The world is weird, man.
President Trump says Sean Diddy Combs has asked him for a pardon.
I have a lot of people have asked me for pardons. I call him Puff Daddy has asked me for a pardon.
Combs is serving a 4-year sentence in a New York City jail on 2 prostitution-related charges. Attorneys for Combs have not commented on President Trump's remarks, but they are asking to move his sentence to a low-security federal prison in New Jersey. ABC News legal contributor Brian Buckmeyer is following that story for us. Brian, you say the president could help Diddy get released without a pardon or full clemency. How so?
So it would be the other way around, that he can, in fact. The president has very broad powers in terms of clemency. Clemency being the larger umbrella where both a pardon and commutation could come up. Now, for most people, they make an application to the Office of the Pardon Attorney in the DOJ, but someone like Sean Combs could go directly to the president, or he could just simply hear of him, and he can either reduce his sentence to the point that he can get released, a commutation, or give him a full pardon.
You say there's also a program that could reduce Diddy's sentence for a year? How?
Yeah, so the defense attorneys have asked for a program called RDAP. It's a very extensive program that if you're incarcerated in the federal prison system for about a little over 3 years, so Sean Combs would be applicable for that, and also have some sort of substance abuse issue. It's a 9 to 12 month 500-hour intensive drug program that if you are successful at it, you can reduce your sentence by an additional year on top of your already good time that you would serve.
I'm telling you right now, if Trump released Diddy, the whole world would go wild. That would be the worst thing he could do.
Thank you all for watching this here video. Please like and subscribe.